You're listening to the podcast Coffee with Mike and Julie, Libertarians Talk Psychology. This is current commentary from an MBA businessman and a PhD psychologist.
Look what they done to my song, Ma. It was the only thing I could do half right, and it's turning out all wrong, Ma. Look what they done.
So today we want to talk about different levels of the system and the concept of self-deception. And the reason this is so important is because self-deception is a key variable in information flow, and all systems, individuals, the psychology of individual, the psychology of group tells us that accurate information flow is critical to the system self-correcting. So as a psychologist, I always look at this. So we were listening to Dave Smith's episode on conspiracies. I think we were in the truck coming back from Mobile, and he said something that blew me away. And one thing you can always tell about self-deception is when you see it in someone else, it blows you away, because you're like, oh my God, how is he saying that? How does he feel that? How does she say that? I mean, it shocks you. And if you're the person who is expressing self-deception, when you acknowledge it, it shocks you. So it's like, oh my God, how did I feel that way then? You know, so there are modules. There are some theorists who think they're modules of the mind, that one area likes to trick the other area, and of course that's Jung's trickster. And so there's a lot of different theorizing about it. So we were riding in the truck and we were listening to Dave Smith's episode on conspiracies. And he was telling us about Jim Jeffries, and that there's this investigative reporter who's pointed out that this guy lied to President Trump about the troop numbers in Syria. And he is, I mean, that's not, in itself is not so surprising. But here this guy is, and Dave Smith is telling us, he's bragging to this investigative reporter, bragging about lying to the president.
So, you know, people can dismiss conspiracy theories all they want to, but here you have a guy publicly acknowledging, kind of bragging about the fact that there are substantially more troops in Syria than what Trump, the commander-in-chief, agreed to allow to stay in the region. This is like fucking insane. And again, to your point about the media, this should be a huge story. A huge story. They make fun of people like us when we talk about the deep state, and we talk about the fact that there are these unelected, shadowy figures in our government who exert tremendous control over what's going on. And here you have one of them bragging about how, yeah, we just lied to the president and to his people about how many troops were actually in Syria. And we figured if we played it down to like, oh, there's only 200 there, that he would allow them to stay. If he knew how many were there, he'd probably want them to be pulled out.
Okay, that is a clear example of self-deception, and it comes across, and we can know it because it's arrogance. You know, the arrogance in Jim Jeffries to not only do it, but to boast about it. In my view, it's actually treason to do that. I mean, I think if you're lying about something as important as troop levels in another country to the commander-in-chief.
Commander-in-chief, and
I mean,
people's lives are in danger.
People's lives are in danger. Families lose husbands and sons. And the president told you he wanted, I don't know if it was 200, I can't remember what Dave Smith said, but anyone listening to us needs to go listen to that with Dave Smith. So this is a wonderful example. Jeffries is giving us a wonderful example of a person who no longer is processing information correctly. And when I've been in organizations, when you get a person like that, you're in trouble. If that's your leader, you're in a group, in a team building session, if that's your leader, you got to take them aside and work through stuff. But it's a bad sign. In a group member, you can overcome it. In a leader, you can't overcome it easily, because that arrogant self-deception chunks information improperly, so that the problem-solving efforts get all screwed up.
And the self-deception, I guess it can be...
I think I talked about it in the Free Speech Foundational. Self-deception is an evolved trait. It's part and parcel of cheating. It is a signal for cheating. It's a signal for cheating.
It apparently can be for several different reasons. When you talk about the leader doing the self-deception, the leader might be doing self-deception so he doesn't have to put up with everybody else's feedback? Or
well, the motivation can be anything. The motivation for self-deception. There's a whole bunch of literature on self-deception. Dunning did a lot of it, showing that people who scored low on an IQ test or artistic test or whatever, you could give them feedback. That you ask them, and I think it's called the above average bias. You ask someone how they scored, and they always say, I'm above average. Nobody ever says I'm below average. Everybody wants to see themselves above average. And sometimes the least capable people modify their self-judgment about whether they how they scored. Actually, the top quartile is more likely to underestimate their capabilities. So there's a lot of literature on self-deception.
So that's self-deception about your own capabilities.
Yeah, you can have that. Yeah,
but Jim Jeffries.
You can have any kind of goal. Self-deception can have any goal. It can be any goal.
So this is individual you're primarily talking about individuals with self-deception, and I know I've felt it. I mean, I know when I see it in myself, I mean, I'm ashamed. I mean, it has hit me like a ton of bricks sometimes to see.
Wow, what in the world well, you mean when it's an aha, when you go, what did I do there? When you get insight into your self-deception?
Especially when it isn't just me keeping my own secret or whatever, keeping it to myself.
When it's exposed.
When it's exposed and it's clear that I've been self-deceptive. But you get it in the little areas all the time. Sometimes you have an idea and it seems like a good idea, and then when you say
it to other
your
people,
idea to somebody else, as you're saying it, you realize, man, this idea is shit. And that would be a form of self-deception too. No,
well,
maybe not.
no, yeah, you're right, and that's the overconfidence that we all have. Now, I want to make a point here: is that everyone in psychotherapy, self-deception is a big deal, and Freud was the first person that noticed that the psyche is arranged to hide itself from itself. His structure of the personality was that the ego worked between the superego and the id to hide things so that the person could adapt and get along. I mean, we all have defense mechanisms and biases. So the first thing is, if a person thinks they don't, I mean, we're getting this a lot now. It's like, since we're bifurcated into two over-boundaried groups called the left and the right, you get the finger pointing, and it's just the strangest thing you've ever seen. It's the finger pointing at the other group is always amusingly exactly what that group is doing, and it's just like,
they're guilty of the very thing they accused the other
exactly, and it's like, oh my God, that's freakish.
But I think you just made what I would consider to be the most important point on this topic, which is we all have it. There is no such thing as, hey,
yeah,
I'm right and that guy is so self-deceptive. It is, we all have it, and we all have to be aware of it.
Yeah, and it is the underlying cause of why power corrupts. The more powerful have it worse, have the self-deceptive disease worse than the lesser powerful people. I mean, that is the whole point of why power corrupts. It can.
And I would guess the more powerful people have more opportunity to self-deceive.
Well, that seems true too, but that's not the major process. Is that the power itself causes a self-deception to grow,
I see.
and so then you get this exponential problem with people who, you know. So now there are interventions to this, you know, in a team, in an organization, and there are things we know to put in place, like performance feedback. I mean, information feedback helps self-deception tremendously.
Yeah,
you know, it's a corrective feedback loop.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
factual information helps.
Well, factual,
clarify the
any
truth.
any kind of feedback. I mean, there are facts, there's other kind of feedback, but yeah, feedback loops, performance feedback loops, balancing feedback loops, the different kind of feedback loops. Like in a high-performing team, one of the things you do is you keep them talking and you have them address conflict. So,
I don't know if this is related to it, but what it makes me think of is when you see a political candidate who's getting ready to be in a debate, and they get a question and they clearly are not prepared to take that question, and you realize they've been prepping with people who don't want to make them uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And the
yes man idea.
They're powerful, and they're used to having yes men around them, and they're not prepared. They're totally stumped with an obvious question.
You're certainly getting into an important dynamic in human beings, which is, I mean, we're going through self-deception, and that's a block to accurate information. And one remedy for that is open feedback and information flow. And one obstacle to that is sensitivity and social sensitivity, which is, I think, a greatly underrated problem in our society. That's one of the things I like about Trump is he's so insensitive.
Yeah, he is not sensitive.
He's like not thin-skinned in any fashion. People think he's thin-skinned, but really I don't think that's defensiveness when he attacks back. I think he attacks back as a rule. You know, he doesn't apologize, and when he's attacked, he attacks back. I think he's like following a program, because I do think he has some tender feelings, because I saw him cry when Lee Greenwald sings
Greenwood, yeah.
Oh, is it Green?
I think it's Greenwood.
Greenwood. Anyway, the wonderful song.
The singer.
The wonderful song that, you know, makes us, I'm glad to be an American. It's like, at least I know I'm free. And it's like one of the best songs. And so I'm seeing Trump tear up. And, yeah, you know, it's like he's...
While I'm tearing up on my side of the table.
No, it's like everybody boo-hoos on that song. So the sensitivity that causes yes men not to confront the leader is also a block to accurate information. Yeah. So we're talking about the social system and the blocks to decision making, and information flow is blocked by self-deception, arrogant self-deception. There are different kinds of self-deception. There's the biases are like, there's one for every day of the year. You know, there's a name for one. So like confirmation bias and all that stuff is actually under the umbrella of self-deception.
So are you ready for me to bring up group
okay, so
self-deception?
yeah, so you have an example of group self-deception.
Yeah. This has to do with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, the business with Ukraine. My comment about the whole thing about Joe and Hunter Biden and Ukraine and the corruption and the deception is that this is not about the Bidens or the Biden family. The real dilemma that we're exposing here is high-level corruption in our government.
Yeah.
That's the
big picture.
It is clear that this is just one of many that these politicians are used to.
This is a norm.
This is a norm. Mm-hmm. Now maybe because he's the vice president, he can exert his influence and make more money for his family members than other politicians can, but clearly this is widespread across the if I am judging the reaction of Washington and the public and the news media properly, they're saying there's nothing to see here because it is so widespread. It isn't because there's nothing to see, it's because it's so common that it's not a big deal.
Well, that's our hypothesis. I mean, that's sad, but I mean, maybe true, but it could be also true that people aren't slowing down long enough to understand what this really means, that this is fascism.
Well, we've been assuming that everyone's the news media and everyone is trying to protect Joe Biden so that he can win the presidency. Okay. I don't think that's what this is really about.
You really don't?
I don't think so. I think it really is true that
they all
this just is not that big a deal.
They all expect to be paid or to make money or to profit under the table.
Well, yeah, of course they don't see it that way because of self-deception.
Yeah.
But
well, apparently a lot of them have all kinds of money, and everybody comes and says, "How do they get this money? They've been working public service." And I have to admit, I was like, yeah, well, how'd you make all that money while you've been working in public service? I mean, I don't know, what do they get paid, $150,000 a year or $200,000 or something like that? And it takes you a long time to get to be a multimillionaire, that at that level. I mean, maybe not.
And this isn't just foreign governments like China or Ukraine or anything else. This applies to all things. The medical complex might hire a son or a daughter, or contribute to a campaign, and these politicians, they don't recuse themselves when Pfizer comes up for some sort of regulation.
Yeah.
Those politicians are not recusing themselves because they have family members working for or having
everybody's embedded groups. So this has led me and you too to consider that we're living in a fascist socialist country, and we thought and we didn't know it. There's so much connection. So you're going to say more about that, but let me share something that happened with me yesterday. I was trying to get some medical records from 2018, where I went into the local hospital. I had those heart palpitations. I was like, my friend said she had heart palpitations and a pain in her back, and turned out she was having a heart attack. So I went in. So I was trying to get my medical records, and they didn't have them, and they wanted to verify who I was. Then they say, we have to ask you some security questions to verify who you are. Oh my God. They asked me 4 multiple choice questions, which I won't repeat, but they knew my professional license as a psychologist. They knew where I lived 10, 15 years ago. They knew the color of the car I drive now. And something else. I mean, it freaked me out what the hospital, then they're a contractor. They're the medical records contractor for the hospital.
Wow. This
is freaking me out, how much the government, how much the internet, we're all on the grid.
Yeah.
And we're not only on the grid, they know what underwear size we have ordered. In other words, this is serious to me. Every now and then it hits me in the face. I was like, you're on the internet and they ask you if they can follow you, and they're all following us probably without asking. Then they probably even know what we look like. This used to be a symptom of schizophrenia if a person said their TV set was looking at them. Now it's actually true. Your TV set is looking at you.
Your iPhone has a feature that will organize your photographs, and apparently what it does is facial recognition. So every photograph that has my mother in the photograph, it can show me every one of those pictures.
Freakish. I mean, maybe the young people aren't freaked out by this, but I am freaked out by it.
Yeah.
It's like, and of course we saw Social Dilemma, the film. Is that a Netflix film? Social Dilemma is the movie.
I think it is. Yeah.
And they show you how they do the programming to even more deeply understand the patterns. What they're doing is a factor analysis. You know, they're clustering variables together that we don't even cluster together, that we don't know to cluster together. So they're doing deep level analysis of the data. They know stuff about us that we don't know about ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, this is freaky. Okay, well, anyway.
Well, I don't know.
Group
We've kind of gotten off.
self-deception.
The only thing I wanted to comment on was just how obvious it is, and there's no doubt about it that there's no doubt about it that Hunter Biden received millions of dollars. There's no doubt about it.
And no one's upset about that, apparently.
No.
I mean,
That's it.
some of the pundits on Fox News are upset.
Well, they seem to be upset, but the general Congress sure as hell weren't following up on it, and if they certainly won't now that the election is over. No one's going to be following up on this stuff. But just to go through the list of things that are obvious, and there's no doubt about it. Hunter Biden received millions of dollars from a foreign company. Mm-hmm. He had a partner who gets on national television.
Yeah.
And testifies comments on national television that Joe Biden was in on the whole thing.
Knew about everything.
Knew about it and was receiving money directly as a result.
Well, I don't know. I don't think he said that. I think he said Joe Biden was in. I don't think he said he was receiving money directly. I listened for that.
Well,
but anyway,
what some of the emails said was that the boss or however they referred to Joe Biden,
$10 million for him aside, or
10% or something. So, but there isn't much doubt about this.
That's pretty clear.
The point is there isn't much doubt about this. And then you have the recording of Joe Biden bragging about getting the prosecutor fired, who was prosecuting
the guys that were
Hunter Biden's company.
They were paying Hunter.
And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch.
I mean, there's just no doubt about this. Everyone knows this. And for this to, and I'm saying it's bad enough that the news media wouldn't cover it. But what alarms me about it is that the politicians in Washington, I mean, they did not care. Ted Cruz commented that, of all people, Ted Cruz commented.
Makes you wonder about Ted Cruz.
Maybe we shouldn't be pursuing this.
Accepting
and I'm thinking,
something.
Well, what are your relatives doing for a living?
Yeah. Where is he? Why is he distorting how bad this is? So you're bringing up the psychology of groups. Now, a lot of people would, sum this up as groupthink, but this is very, very important. Where the norms in a system say nothing to see here. Don't look at this. Don't look at this through a viewfinder that this is corruption. Look at this differently. The group will absolutely follow the direction of the information leadership. It's like framing the problem a certain way or not framing it a certain way does give the group a shorthand, energy conserving way of dealing with reality. So that's what we call groupthink. Groupthink's not a really good word for it. I guess groupthink is just an overused word for it, but it is a kind of a good word for it. But the group will dumb itself down on purpose to conserve its energy, and that's what's happening. That the in-your-face corruption by the politicians in this country is being smoked and mirrored. It's not really that, though, is it? It's that it's being turned into pablum and fed the public as if it's if it's okay because it's okay because everybody does it. It's the okay because everybody does it.
Well, I wish they would say that, but they don't say that. They just don't.
They behave in that way.
They behave that way, but what they say is that it's a lie. Hunter Biden, that Joe Biden never received, you don't have any proof that Joe Biden directly received any money. I don't care if he directly received any money or not. This is a clear conflict of interest for his family to be getting big bucks. They don't have to prove that Joe Biden got money.
What's that,
directly.
Influence peddling? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what everyone is saying is okay in Washington. That we know that it happens when some company contributes money to a politician, and that politician accepts the money, and then as he's executing his duties, he passes legislation that hinders the competition from competing against that guy. He doesn't. No one considers that there's anything wrong with that. Well, our foreign governments and our foreign companies, they've learned how the system works.
Yeah.
So they're contributing money not only to the politicians but also to the family members.
Well, so two pieces of evidence.
And the same thing is occurring.
Two pieces of evidence to add to that. D.C. voted 96% or 95% against Donald Trump, the most outlier of all the states. So D.C., that's evidence to me D.C. hates the disruptor president, the one that was pulling them apart. Then the other day I was ordering stuff off Amazon, and the ratings now, I mean, all the kids know that, the young people know this, but I don't know this stuff until the ratings are like global ratings. And I'm thinking, I don't want global ratings. I want to know what my norm group thinks of this product. I don't care what someone from India thinks of this product. I mean, when we get ready to do research like this, your normative group is essential to you knowing information. I mean, because a lot of reasons. You don't do research where you throw everybody in a stew and hope that you can define something. I mean, with some research you can do it that way. So then I start looking at where these products come from. It's like, I'm not buying from China. I don't trust some of these and you get company names which don't make any sense, and you can't find a company website. I mean, we are being led down the garden path on some of this stuff.
Well, good luck on not buying from China. If you buy something from Walmart, it's probably...
Well, I don't buy from Walmart, but I mean, it's true. What you're saying is true, and I know that. Either it's from China or some part of it's from China.
Yeah.
I don't buy any food from another country when I don't have to.
Yeah.
I absolutely have to. Well, what is our conclusion? That we poor saps, human beings, are designed for self-deception. There's no way out of it except feedback loops. And that tells us, of course, we're in a time where free speech is being suppressed. Freedom of information, a free press does not exist any longer. Real journalists, I mean, you have to dig out the real journalists with a toothpick out of the internet. So the citizen really has to be on alert for the clues and cues to self-deception, both in the individuals they interact with and especially in the groups. And here's why: the individual can cheat you, but the group cheating can pull you down big time. The group has a lot more power to destroy an individual. Another individual doesn't have a lot of power to destroy you. Of course they can, psychopaths can destroy people, but really one person, you don't have to fear one person, but you have to fear a group that's in self-deception. Because a group in self-deception can do anything it wants to do,
so much more power.
And then ignore the moral limitations on itself. I mean, it is a serious problem when a group is in self-deception.